Hawaii isn't just about sunny beaches and surfing, it's a land of raw power, and no place shows this more than Mauna Loa. This is one of the largest active volcanoes on Earth. It's a beast. Most people visit for the views, then they leave. But one man called it home. His name was Oliver. For nearly 50 years he lived inside a crater near the summit. He was a ghost, a legend whispered about by the few who knew. He chose a life that most of us can't even imagine, a world away from everything we know. He turned his back on society and walked into the heart of a sleeping giant. Imagine waking up not to an alarm clock but to the silence of volcanic rock. That was Oliver's reality. He had no electricity, no running water, no phone. His companions were the wind, the sun, and the hardened lava flows that stretched for miles in every direction. His home was a small hut, built by his own hands from materials he could find. He lived a life stripped down to the bare essentials. It was just him against the elements. A daily battle for survival in one of the planet's most unforgiving landscapes. This wasn't a weekend camping trip. This was his entire existence for half a century. Most people would call this place a wasteland, barren, desolate. But to Oliver, it was a sanctuary. He had found a peace here that the modern world could never offer him. He was completely disconnected from the noise, the chaos, the demands of society. He created his own rules, his own routine, his own small kingdom on the slopes of Mauna Loa. He was the sole inhabitant of a world he had built for himself, a world where the only authority was nature itself. Every sunrise was a victory, and every sunset a promise of another day of solitude. Choosing to live like this is one thing, actually doing it is another. The challenges were immense. The altitude is high, making the air thin and cold. The weather can change in an instant, from scorching sun to freezing rain. There are no shops for food, no doctors for when you get sick. Oliver had to rely on his wits and his strength for everything. He was the ultimate survivor, a real-life Robinson Crusoe. But his island was a sea of volcanic rock. His story isn't just about survival, it's about a deliberate and profound choice to live apart from all of humanity. So, how did he do it? How did one man survive for so long in such a harsh place? It came down to pure ingenuity. Oliver was incredibly resourceful. He learned the land like the back of his hand. He knew where to find pockets of soil to grow vegetables. He painstakingly built terraces on the crater's slopes, creating small gardens where he grew potatoes, carrots, and greens. These gardens were his lifeline. He had to protect them from the harsh sun and the biting winds. He built low stone walls around them, a simple but brilliant solution. This was his version of a supermarket. Water was his biggest challenge. There are no rivers or streams high up on Mauna Loa. Oliver became a master of collecting rainwater. He carved channels into the rock to direct the flow into containers. He used large leaves and pieces of salvaged material to create funnels. Every single drop was precious. He stored it carefully in barrels he had somehow hauled up the mountain years before. He understood the rhythm of the seasons, knowing when the rains would come, and how much he needed to save to get through the dry spells. This wasn't just about being thirsty. It was about planning, patience, and respecting nature's limits. For everything else, Oliver became a master scavenger and craftsman. He built his shelter from volcanic rock and salvaged wood. His tools were basic, often made by himself. He would hike for miles to collect things washed ashore on the coast or left behind by others. He could repair anything with a bit of wire or a cleverly tied knot. He lived by the rule waste nothing. A broken bucket wasn't rubbish, it was a potential planter or a piece of a water collection system. He turned the discarded remnants of our world into the building blocks of his own. Living alone for so long changes a person. Oliver became part of the landscape. He moved with a quiet confidence, his skin weathered by the sun and wind. He didn't need to speak, his thoughts were his own. The constant solitude would have broken most people, but for Oliver, it seemed to bring a deep sense of calm. He wasn't just surviving in nature, he was in harmony with it. He had shed the person he was before and become someone new, someone shaped by the silence, the struggle, and the stark beauty of the volcano. Why would anyone choose such an extreme existence? What was Oliver running from? This is where the story gets mysterious. Whispers and rumors followed him up the mountain. Some said he was a fugitive, a man with a dark past. The story that stuck was that he was hiding from the law. There were tales that he had been involved in something serious back on the mainland, something that made him want to disappear off the face of the earth. Living in a volcano crater is a pretty good way to do that. No one would ever think to look for him there. The shadow of the FBI looms large over Oliver's story. According to some accounts, federal agents had been looking for a man who matched his description for years. The charges were never made public, but the speculation was wild. Was he a spy from the Cold War era? Had he been involved in a major crime? The FBI's interest added a layer of intrigue to the legend of the hermit of Mauna Loa. It transformed him from a simple recluse into a man with a secret. A man who had to stay hidden at all costs. His isolation wasn't just a lifestyle choice, it was a necessity. Think about the mental strength required to live like that. Every day, he would have lived with the fear of being discovered. Every hiker or scientist he saw in the distance could have been someone coming for him. This constant state of alert would have been exhausting. It explains his desire for complete isolation. He wasn't just seeking peace and quiet, he was seeking invisibility. He had to be a ghost to stay free. This adds a tragic element to his story. His sanctuary was also his prison, a cage made of rock and fear. Ultimately, we will never know the full truth. Oliver took his secrets with him. He never spoke of his past to the few people he encountered. He was a closed book. Perhaps the story of the FBI was just a rumor that grew into a legend. Or maybe it was the absolute truth. The mystery is what makes his story so compelling. He wasn't just a man who lived in a volcano. He was a man who seemed to have erased his own history, leaving us with nothing but questions and the silent, imposing presence of the mountain he called home. After nearly 50 years of solitude, the story takes its final, baffling turn. One day, Oliver was simply gone. A group of hikers who knew of the legend went to visit his crater. They found his hut, his tools, and his small, well-tended garden. Everything was in its place, as if he had just stepped out for a moment. But Oliver was nowhere to be found. There were no signs of a struggle, no note, no indication that he had packed up and left. It was as if the volcano had finally swallowed him whole. He had vanished without a trace. The authorities were notified. Even the FBI, who supposedly had an old file on him, took an interest. Search parties scoured the vast, treacherous slopes of Mauna Loa. They used helicopters and teams on foot. They searched for days, looking for any clue, a piece of clothing, a footprint, anything. But they found nothing. The landscape that had been his home for 5 decades had kept his final secret. How could a man who knew this terrain so intimately just disappear? It made no sense. The man who had mastered survival had been defeated by the very place he knew best. What happened to Oliver? The theories are as wild as the landscape itself. Did he finally succumb to the elements, falling into a hidden lava tube or a deep crevice? This is the most likely explanation. Or did his past finally catch up with him? Did someone find him after all these years? Some even whisper that he simply walked away, deciding it was time to find a new place to hide, a new sanctuary. Perhaps he knew his time was up and chose to disappear on his own terms, leaving behind one last puzzle for the world to ponder. Today, 50 years after he first sought refuge there, Oliver's story remains one of Hawaii's greatest unsolved mysteries. His small garden has long been reclaimed by nature, and his hut is slowly crumbling back into the earth. But his legend endures. He is a testament to the human capacity for survival and our deep, often hidden need for solitude. The man who vanished in a volcano reminds us that some secrets are never meant to be solved. They belong to the wild places of the world and to the silent, watchful mountains that keep them.